The 10-foot humanoids of Ilha do Mel. The photographs captured by hikers in Brazil have created a wave of fascination, wonder, and concern after many viewers became convinced that the figures standing on a mountaintop were not ordinary people, but towering beings measuring close to 10 feet in height. The footage, recorded by Sara Dalete from Brasilia during a family outing on Ilha do Mel, shows tall, slender silhouettes moving along the ridge. Their proportions appeared unusually elongated, and the way they stood against the landscape immediately drew attention. As soon as the images began to circulate, countless viewers felt that Sarah had unknowingly filmed a pair of mysterious humanoids. Sarah's translated caption emphasized that the videos were original and unaltered. She noted that in the second clip, as one of the figures descended the slope, its height became even more apparent. Though it moved in a manner resembling a human, its exceptional stature set it apart from any ordinary hiker. The footage gained momentum online within hours, igniting debates across social platforms. Those who examined the images closely pointed out the distinctive shape, posture, and unusual height of the beings, insisting that the figures did not match the scale or proportions of typical individuals. What pushed the speculation further were the testimonies from locals who live near the region. Several residents described encountering similar beings in the surrounding mountains and forests. Their stories spoke of creatures standing over 8 feet tall, sometimes even taller, moving with astonishing speed and agility. These accounts have been shared for years, often quietly passed from one resident to another, and the new footage seemed to confirm what many had already believed. The consistency between the images and the local encounters strengthened the idea that something remarkable inhabits the remote areas of Ilha do Mel. According to hikers who have ventured deep into these regions, a legend persists about tall humanoids who dwell near the mountains. These stories claim that the creatures live in the isolated parts of the landscape, rarely seen but often felt, leaving travelers with an overwhelming sense of being watched from the ridgelines. Some believe these beings may belong to a lost race, isolated from society and hidden within the rugged terrain for generations. The recent photographs, now seen around the world, have renewed interest in these legends, giving them an unexpected resurgence. The mysterious images have become more than just viral curiosities. They have opened a new chapter in the long-held belief that the mountains of Brazil may harbor ancient, towering beings whose existence has yet to be fully understood. The mystery of the melonheads. In the state of Ohio, particularly in Lake and Goga counties, residents and eyewitnesses have reported strange encounters with bizarre creatures known as the melonheads. These short bipedal beings are said to have disproportionately large, bulbous heads, a feature that has fueled local legends about their mysterious origins. Due to the limited number of sightings, not much is known about the creatures, but their association with a dark and disturbing tale has made them one of Ohio's most chilling legends. The most well-known story surrounding the melonheads ties back to an alleged doctor named Dr. Crow, whose twisted experiments may have played a role in the creature's origins. According to local law, during the 1930s and 1940s, Dr. Crow operated either a mental asylum or an orphanage in Kirtland, Ohio. While variations of the story exist, one consistent element is that he experimented on young individuals afflicted with hydrocephalus, a condition that causes an abnormal buildup of fluid in the brain, leading to an enlarged skull. Some versions of the legend claim that Dr. Crow's experiments were an attempt to cure hydrocephalus, though his methods were cruel and inhumane. Others suggest he intentionally inflicted the condition on people to study its effects. The experiments reportedly included drilling holes into skulls, performing crude lobotomies, and exposing patients to electroshock therapy. The legend further claims that Dr. Crow's victims eventually turned against him. In a dramatic act of revenge, the surviving individuals organized an attack, ending the doctor's life before escaping into the nearby woods. With nowhere else to go, they learned to live off the land, relying on the kindness of local residents who left food for them. Over time, these individuals became the legendary melonheads, their physical deformities giving rise to the eerie sightings reported throughout the region. Another variation of the legend suggests that Dr. Crow was not associated with an orphanage, but was instead a private researcher who lived near Wisner Road in Kirtland. This version claims that he had struck a secret deal with a local mental institution to obtain people for medical experiments. Over time, he expanded his twisted research by taking people from the surrounding area. His experiments reportedly involved injecting chemicals and radioactive substances into the brains of his victims, causing severe mutations and neurological damage. As the story goes, after months of horrific treatment, his patients turned on him, setting fire to his home and escaping into the woods, where they became the elusive melonheads. Although no official records confirm Dr. Crow's existence or the alleged experiments, some historical evidence hints at a grain of truth behind the tale. A newspaper article from the West Georgia Sun once mentioned a Dr. Crow living in Kirtland during World War II, conducting research on human subjects. Additionally, similar legends of unethical experiments on hydrocephalus patients exist in other states such as Connecticut, Michigan, and West Virginia, leading some to believe that the melonhead legend may be tied to a larger, more sinister scheme involving government-sanctioned medical experiments in the mid-20th century. Whether the melonheads are the lingering spirits of these tragic victims, mutated survivors, or simply an eerie folktale passed down through generations, their presence in Ohio's folklore remains strong. The legend continues to spark curiosity and fear, keeping the mystery of the melonheads alive. A hiker's mysterious encounter in the Adirondack Mountains. A hiker traveling through the Adirondack Mountains recently shared a disturbing and unforgettable encounter that has since become one of the most unusual stories connected to the region. According to his detailed account, he had been walking along a remote trail during a calm afternoon, enjoying the quiet and isolation of the deep forest. The Adirondacks are known for their vast wilderness and sweeping landscapes, but nothing in the man's years of hiking could have prepared him for what he experienced on that day. As he moved deeper along the trail, he became aware of another presence behind him. At first, he believed it was simply another hiker, but within moments, he realized how unusual the situation truly was. The figure who trailed behind him was described as a mysterious human, moving with an unsettling, almost unnatural rhythm. The hiker explained that this individual followed him for miles while making strange, guttural noises that did not resemble any language he recognized. These noises grew louder and more insistent the longer the encounter lasted. Though the hiker tried to remain calm, the man's strange behavior quickly turned the peaceful trek into a deeply unnerving experience. Even more unsettling was the way the stranger moved in and out of the woodlands beside the path. At several points, the hiker said the man would dart suddenly into the dense forest, disappearing from sight completely, only to appear again hundreds of meters ahead on the trail, standing motionless and waiting. This inexplicable ability to appear so far ahead made the hiker question everything he understood about distances, speed, and the natural environment. The figure's clothing further added to the mystery. The hiker described the stranger as wearing outdated, heavily damaged attire that resembled the uniform of a middle-aged soldier from a distant era. His clothing was torn and faded, as though it had endured countless seasons in the wilderness. Nothing about his appearance fit the setting or suggested he was a modern traveler. The man's face also carried a worn, haunted look, as if he had come from a time long forgotten. Communication proved impossible. The stranger did not speak English or any recognizable language. Every attempt the hiker made to communicate was met only with low grunts or throaty sounds. These noises were not aggressive, but they carried an unsettling intensity, as if the mysterious man were trying to express something he had no words for. This lack of clear communication made the entire encounter feel even more surreal, as though the hiker were interacting with someone displaced from another time. The encounter lasted approximately 30 minutes, during which the stranger repeatedly vanished into the forest and reappeared at different points along the trail. Then, just as abruptly as the encounter began, it ended. While the hiker cautiously watched the man drift into the trees one final time, he waited for the familiar pattern of reappearance. But this time, the figure never returned. The forest grew silent again. The air felt heavy, as though the woods themselves were holding on to the strange energy left behind. The hiker later reflected that there was nothing in the area that could have supported someone living in such conditions. The mystery of Joseph Halpin. The mysterious disappearance of Joseph Halpin remains one of the most perplexing unsolved cases of the early 20th century. On the 15th of August, 1933, Halpern set out on what was meant to be a simple camping trip with a friend. During their stay in the park, he chose to hike Taylor Peak alone, carrying only an army knapsack. This decision would mark the beginning of a mystery that continues to intrigue researchers and historians. When Halpern failed to return from his solo hike, his companions immediately alerted authorities, prompting a massive search effort across the rugged terrain. Soon after the search began, a snowstorm swept through the area, covering potential tracks and making the terrain even more difficult to navigate. Despite extensive efforts by rescue teams, no trace of Halpern or his belongings was found. It was as though he had vanished without leaving a single clue behind. As the days passed, hope dwindled, yet the mystery only grew deeper. In the months that followed, strange reports began to surface across the United States. In December of 1933, an individual in Phoenix, Arizona, claimed to have seen Halpern traveling with members of the Civilian Conservation Corps. This unexpected sighting suggested that he might have survived and moved far from the place where he disappeared. Then, during the summer of 1935, new reports emerged, including one involving the Lewis Brothers Circus. Witnesses insisted the man they saw strongly resembled Halpern, adding another layer of curiosity to the case. These unconfirmed sightings brought both hope and confusion to those who knew him. While some believed Halpern had chosen to begin a new life, others felt he may have been wandering without fully understanding his circumstances. Despite all efforts to track down the truth, Halpern's final whereabouts remained unknown. His disappearance left investigators, friends, and family members with a lingering sense of uncertainty and the haunting possibility that his story may never be fully understood. Indian Army find Yeti tracks. In April 2019, the Indian Army announced a discovery that reignited one of the most enduring mysteries of the Himalayas. While conducting operations near the remote Makalu base camp, soldiers came across a trail of enormous footprints in the snow. These impressions, measuring an astonishing 32 by 15 inches, immediately captured the attention of both researchers and enthusiasts. Their size alone suggested that they did not belong to any known animal, and given their position at an altitude of more than 19,000 feet, the possibility of them being formed by ordinary humans or wildlife became extremely unlikely. To many, this discovery represented one of the strongest pieces of evidence ever documented in the long-running search for the elusive Yeti. The Yeti, often described as a towering, powerful humanoid creature dwelling high in the Himalayan peaks, has been embedded in regional culture for centuries. Locals living in these rugged and frost-bitten landscapes have passed down stories of the creature through countless generations, describing it as a rare and reclusive being that avoids human contact. Over the years, climbers and explorers have reported fleeting encounters, glimpses of immense figures against the snow, and the discovery of massive footprints appearing unexpectedly along mountain paths. Yet despite these ongoing accounts, solid physical evidence has remained elusive, keeping the mystery alive. When the Indian Army revealed their findings, the photographs of the footprints sparked widespread debate. Supporters of the Yeti's existence viewed the images as long-awaited confirmation that something extraordinary inhabits the icy wilderness. The sheer scale and distinct shape of the prints matched many eyewitness descriptions passed down through the decades. The fact that trained military personnel, accustomed to navigating harsh environments and identifying various forms of wildlife, were responsible for the discovery lent even more credibility to the event. However, despite the excitement, some scientists continued to express skepticism. They suggested that unusual snow conditions, melting patterns, or rare animals native to the high altitudes might have contributed to the shape of the tracks. Yet those who closely examined the impressions argued that the footprints appeared deliberate, evenly spaced, and too uniform to be the result of natural processes. Many who believe in the Yeti pointed out that such dismissals are common, and that it is precisely this skepticism that prevents individuals, organizations, and even governments from sharing their encounters openly. The Indian Army, according to many observers, faced unnecessary ridicule despite presenting photographic evidence of the tracks. The discovery near Makalu Base Camp breathed new life into the search for the Yeti. It encouraged renewed interest in field investigations, inspired researchers, and strengthened local legends. For enthusiasts, the footprints represent a vital clue that may eventually lead to a breakthrough. as scientific knowledge expands and exploration techniques advance, humanity may one day uncover definitive proof of the mysterious creature that has captivated imaginations for generations. Until that moment arrives, the legend of the Yeti continues to thrive. Mysterious encounters with the sheep squatch. The mystery of the sheep squatch stands as one of the most compelling legends to emerge from the remote Appalachian Mountains. Hidden within the dense forests, rugged hills, and fog-covered valleys of this region, the creature known as the sheep squatch has captured the imagination of countless individuals who firmly believe in its authenticity. Despite skepticism from some researchers, the lore surrounding this strange being has only grown stronger over the decades, supported by eyewitnesses who insist that their encounters were genuine. The deep-rooted fascination with the sheep squatch reflects a broader human desire to understand the unexplored, to grasp the secrets still lingering within the natural world, and to appreciate the mysteries that continue to elude explanation. The origins of the sheep squatch legend trace back to early Appalachian folklore, with some of the earliest accounts coming from Native American groups who spoke of a frightening white creature known as the White Thing, or the White Devil of the South. These descriptions depicted a large, shaggy entity with features resembling both a sheep and a human-like figure. As the folklore traveled through generations, settlers in the region incorporated it into their own stories, eventually merging these accounts into what would later be known as the sheep squatch. Over time, the creature became deeply embedded in regional identity, whispered about in remote cabins and around old campfires, adding to one of the most unusual creatures in the eastern United States. Traditionally, the sheep squatch was held responsible for strange disruptions in rural communities, particularly the unexplained vanishing of livestock. Farmers in isolated Appalachian valleys spoke cautiously of the creature's presence, believing it roamed at night and wandered through quiet pastures under the pale glow of the moon. These early tales fueled fear and fascination, and while some dismissed them as exaggerations, many locals accepted the creature's presence as an unquestioned part of life near the wilderness. Modern encounters have further strengthened belief in the sheep squatch. Numerous eyewitness reports describe a towering, two-legged figure covered in tangled white fur. One of the most striking accounts came from a hiker in West Virginia who reported seeing an enormous creature standing among the trees. The hiker insisted that the creature's facial structure resembled a distorted version of a human face, complete with intense crimson eyes that reflected the forest light. The encounter left the individual shaken, unable to explain what he had seen except by relating it to the old stories of the sheep squatch. Another vivid account originated from a group of campers deep in the Appalachian backcountry. As they settled in for the night, they heard bizarre guttural sounds echoing from the woods. Initially believing it to be an animal, the group grew alarmed when they saw a massive, shadowy figure moving between the trees near their campsite. Before disappearing into the dense foliage, the creature let out a chilling, otherworldly howl that none of the campers could forget. They later described the encounter as one of the most unforgettable and unsettling moments of their lives. Physical evidence has occasionally surfaced, lending additional weight to the sheep squatch legend. In the remote wilderness of Kentucky, researchers discovered enormous footprints featuring claw-like features and an unusual arrangement of toes. These prints did not resemble those of any known wildlife native to the region. Their distinct size and shape left some specialists puzzled, suggesting the possibility of an undocumented creature moving through the area. These mysterious tracks continue to fuel debates regarding the sheep squatch's existence and raise questions about what else may be hidden in the Appalachian wilderness. Over the years, hair samples allegedly connected to sheep squatch encounters have been subjected to scientific study. Some tests revealed genetic patterns that did not match established species. While these findings do not conclusively prove the creature's existence, they add complexity to the investigation and suggest that the region may harbor organisms still waiting to be properly identified. Various theories attempt to explain the sheep squatch, each offering its own interpretation of the creature's origins. One popular belief suggests that it may be a relic species, perhaps a surviving branch of an ancient lineage that adapted to the Appalachian wilderness long before modern humans arrived. Another theory proposes that the sheep squatch could be an undiscovered primate or hominid species, possibly related to other creatures like Sasquatch. More speculative theories even imagine the creature as having interdimensional attributes, able to move in and out of visibility, which might explain its tendency to vanish without leaving evidence behind. The sheep-squatch remains one of the most mysterious figures in Appalachian folklore. Whether viewed as a physical being, an ancient relic, or a mysterious force hidden within the mountains, the creature continues to inspire wonder. The mystery of Kilimanjaro whispering stones. The Kilimanjaro whispering stones have long been regarded as one of the most intriguing mysteries surrounding Africa's highest peak. High on the slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro, far above the bustling trails where most hikers travel, lie scattered clusters of stones that many claim emit soft, whisper-like sounds. These murmurs, sometimes faint and sometimes surprisingly distinct, have become the source of legends among guides, climbers, and local communities. Those who have heard them describe the experience as both calming and unsettling, as though the mountain itself is speaking through the stones. Accounts of the whispering stones stretch back through generations. Local residents living in the shadow of Kilimanjaro have passed down stories of the mountain's spiritual presence, believing that certain places on the slopes hold deep energy. According to these traditions, the stones are said to carry the voices of ancient guardians, whispering guidance or warnings to those who attempt the climb. Many hikers who have experienced the phenomenon agree that the sounds seem purposeful, not like random gusts of wind or shifting gravel. Instead, the whispers appear to form rhythmic patterns, almost like soft conversation carried through the thin mountain air. Modern climbers, equipped with cameras and audio recorders, have attempted to capture the mysterious sounds, though many who make the journey say that recordings rarely reflect the real experience. They claim the whispers feel directional, as if they travel through the climber rather than around them. The sensation often leaves listeners with a profound sense of introspection. Some hikers describe hearing gentle murmurs when passing the stones, only to turn around and find no movement, no wind, and no human presence nearby. Those who believe in the authenticity of the whispering stones argue that the phenomenon may be connected to the mountain's powerful environment. The mysterious disappearance of Tom Carlton in the Adirondacks. On the 12th of October back in 1993, one of the most experienced hikers, a 44-year-old man by the name of Thomas James Carlton, would suddenly be reported missing after failing to return home while on a short weekend vacation to the Adirondack Mountains. A psychologist working for the New York State prison system, Tom was an avid hiker and a highly experienced outdoorsman who was one of the most experienced members of the Adirondack Mountain Club, which specialized in climbing the very mountains he would vanish from. Most peculiar, however, there are a strange number of events and inexplicable accounts surrounding Tom's vanishing, the extensive search efforts made to locate him, and the unsettling trend of missing persons in the Adirondacks. Back during the 9th of October, Tom Carlton embarked on a solo hiking expedition, leaving his Scanatella's home early in the morning. His destination was Mount Marcy, and equipped with a teal backpack filled with essential supplies, he set off without a tent. Tom relished the solitude and challenge of venturing into remote areas, often deviating from popular trails as he had done countless times before during his history on the mountain. Unfortunately, this time, Tom Carlton would not return as expected. Growing increasingly concerned, Tom's wife, Dea, would report her husband's absence to the local authorities, including the state police, United States Forest Service, and the county sheriff's department, on the 12th of October. The response to the distress call was swift, with a collaborative effort involving the state police, New York Department of Environmental Conservation, over a dozen friends from Tom's workplace, and various search and rescue teams. The search encompassed an extensive area, covering 100 square miles and 256 miles of marked trails, as well as numerous unmarked trails and wildlife paths, making it one of the largest search efforts recorded in the area at the time. Oddly enough, as days turned into weeks, the search operation would find no evidence of the missing hiker, despite their efforts having intensified over time. By the 4th day of the search, on the 16th of October, trained search and rescue dogs and their handlers would join the quest for Tom Carlton and cover the hundreds of miles of combined distance. One particularly skilled dog named Flash managed to pick up Tom's scent from the trailhead where his car had been left. Despite their valiant efforts, As Flash attempted to follow Tom's scent, the specific trail Tom had supposedly passed over became overcrowded with impassable thicket, terrain, and cliffsides. The search team accompanying Flash had to retreat due to impassable terrain, hindering their progress in locating Tom and causing the canine to become confused and lose Tom's scent. Such a strange finding led many of the volunteers wondering how it would have been possible for Tom to have passed through the area without any signs or tracks other than his scent, and worry began to spread. That perhaps his scent was scattered in the area due to a wild animal attack or other bizarre claims far too strange to have been shared. Additional unexplainable clues began to emerge when search coordinators examined hiker logbooks along the trail. They discovered 2 names that had potential information regarding Tom's whereabouts. The hikers, both from the Ithaca area, recalled encountering Tom at a lean-to on the Indian Trail Pass, approximately 4 miles away from the Adirondack Lodge. They remembered him vividly due to his distinctive teal backpack. This encounter likely took place late in the afternoon on Tom's first day on the trail, and initially followed where Flash had tracked Tom's scent. This encounter between the hikers made the sudden veering off into nearby impassable terrain all the more peculiar, however, as Tom would have been well on the trail and talked with others on the trail, making it next to impossible for him to have become lost on the hiker, as the amateur trails were wide open, popular with numerous hikers and following a steady path where Tom had initially planned to go. Instead of following the path, however, the evidence would show that Tom would suddenly veer off of the path and travel in a direction humanly impossible to have followed. Perhaps the most peculiar, despite the leads from the witness accounts, searchers faced numerous challenges in their pursuit of Tom. Sudden inclement weather further complicated their efforts, as rain and snowfall blanketed the Indian Pass area on October 9th. Not only would the weather make the environment incredibly difficult to traverse and hostile for search and rescue volunteers to stay in the area among freezing cold temperatures, but would further complicate the search due to its sudden unplanned appearance. Search and rescue volunteers seemed unable to explain how predicted stable and warm weathers could suddenly be converted into such a treacherous condition in such a short span of time. Oddly enough, during many of the disappearances of persons across the Adirondacks, sudden bad weather plays a repeating role. Although Tom had expressed his intention to utilize the lean-tos for shelter, which created the possibility that he had sought cover, search and rescue grew concerned that if Tom Carlton was lost or injured, the weather would put him at an increased chance of injury, hypothermia, or expiration. Nonetheless, extensive searches focused on Mount Marcy and Indian Pass failed to yield any concrete leads. Today, Tom Carlton's disappearance remains an unsolved mystery, despite the tireless endeavors of helicopters, canines, skilled search and rescue personnel, and dedicated volunteers. Astonishingly, not a single trace of Tom or his belongings was ever recovered. The 2 hikers in the lean-to provided the last known contact with him, leaving searchers perplexed as to what transpired afterward. Strikingly, the location where Tom's scent was traced coincided with an area where the search had to be called off due to treacherous terrain. Tom's vanishing was not an isolated incident in the Adirondack Mountains. The region has gained notoriety for a concerning cluster of missing persons cases. Mount Marcy, in particular, has witnessed a disconcerting number of disappearances. The unyielding wilderness poses significant challenges for search and rescue teams, leaving unanswered questions and haunting the families of those who have gone missing. Kevin Dye disappeared from the Elkhorn Mountain regions. Back on the 18th of July, 1971, a 9-year-old boy went missing while playing with his family outside their small cabin, located roughly 10 miles southeast of the small town of Casper, Wyoming. According to the investigators, 9-year-old Kevin Dye was outside playing ping pong with other family members and members from his local church group while vacationing near Elkhorn Creek. After playing for about an hour and the family was beginning to wind down, it would be some time at around 3 in the afternoon that Kevin Dye would accidentally hit the ping pong ball off of the table, sending it flying past the nearby brush and into the dense wilderness. Wishing to quickly resume their game, the family members would ask Kevin to go and find the ping pong ball as they heard it bounce a few yards away. The family members would later tell investigators that not only was Kevin unfamiliar with the area, and that the family had very rarely ever gone outdoors for vacationing, but that 9-year-old Kevin also suffered from an unknown neurodevelopmental disorder. It could have been due to his lack of outdoors experience or his disorder, or perhaps a combination of both. But shortly after stepping out of view of his family, Kevin would suddenly vanish while standing within an adjacent brush to the property. At first, Kevin's family was unaware that anything strange had occurred, with several members of the family patiently waiting for Kevin to find the ping-pong ball and return shortly after. It would be after roughly 5 minutes of waiting that one of the family members would call out to Kevin if he had found the missing ball, which would help to alert the rest of the family and church group members that something peculiar had truly occurred. According to the family, shortly after calling out to Kevin and failing to get a response, several family members would get up and walk in the general direction where Kevin was believed to have disappeared to, but were unable to find any sign of him or get any response while calling out his name. It would be roughly 10 minutes after he was last sighted that the family, alongside volunteer members from their local church congregation, would begin searching the nearby area and calling out to the 9-year-old boy for the next 30 minutes to an hour. Once it became apparent that Kevin Dye was completely missing from the area, Kevin's family would contact the local county sheriff's department and members from the United States Forest Service to help conduct a formal missing persons search. Before any law enforcement agencies or Forest Service could reach the area, Kevin's family and church members would already recruit another several dozen volunteers from the region after going to other small cabins located nearby and asking vacationers, tourists, hikers, experienced outdoorsmen and amateur campers to assist in searching for their son's whereabouts. It would be less than 2 hours after Kevin's disappearance that more than 200 volunteers had joined the search efforts for the missing boy, including the local sheriff's department, United States Forest Service, trained paramedic first responders, and a team of expert bloodhounds with accompanying dog handlers. The location where Kevin was last seen would be the focal point of the search and rescue operation, which was focused in a 6-mile radius from his last known location, with their attention centered around Elkhorn Creek and the Elkhorn Mountain regions. Although a 9-year-old boy can easily walk more than 6 miles in a single day, the area of Kevin's disappearance was located in a dense wilderness, resting about 8 miles southeast of the small town of Casper, Wyoming, that was nearly impossible to traverse, even for experienced hikers. This difficulty of travel left the search radius much tighter and closer than would have been originally expected for a more wide-open region. It would be at around this moment that investigators would learn of the severity of Kevin's disabilities. Kevin's parents would claim that when he was younger, Kevin had suffered from epilepsy and was prone to epileptic fits under strenuous conditions. It was also conveyed by the parents that Kevin had trouble with speaking and would typically make short vocal sounds or simple words when addressed directly. Because of Kevin's history of epilepsy and inability to vocalize loudly, investigators quickly assumed that Kevin could have been incapacitated, stuck in a semi-conscious state of disorientation and confusion, or completely unable to call out to search and rescue volunteers, even if he were within earshot, due to his sporadic muteness. This would lead investigators to immediately focus all of their attention, instead of tracking Kevin's location using the trained team of bloodhounds, rather than to fan out in random directions with the search and rescue volunteers, as he could have been easily missed. By the time that the sun had set, local newspapers would claim that more than 3,000 volunteers, composed of local visitors, nearby residents and trained search and rescue professionals, had joined the recovery efforts for 9-year-old Kevin Dye and had covered more than 10 square miles of distance from where Kevin had last been seen. It would also be at around this time that increasingly strange encounters would be made that would puzzle and confuse volunteer search and rescue teams and lead to a bizarre set of borderline unnatural claims. One of the strange claims made by search and rescue teams was that some searchers claimed to have encountered the boy who would quickly run from them or hide from them in nearby rocks before disappearing entirely. According to one of the witnesses, a small figure had been seen crouching in a bush that was located a few feet away, but when searchers got close to him and attempted to surround the area where he had been seen, no sign of the boy would be found. These bizarre encounters would continue over the course of several days as search and rescue teams continued to search for Kevin. Even more peculiar, however, 2 supposed sightings of Kevin would be made at around the same time more than 4 miles apart. By the 3rd day of the search, volunteers started to theorize that they could possibly find the boy if they left out some food for the boy at strategic spots where he had been seen. Although trained law enforcement and professional search and rescue teams focused on tracking the missing boy with the help of the bloodhounds, the amateur volunteers started leaving out food, hoping to catch the boy while he was eating. An article published in the local newspaper referred to as the Ogden Standard would write the following paragraph about an incident that occurred after a woman left a plate of food outside her cottage. Sheriff Bill Estes said that Kevin Dye was believed to have been seen again last night between 10 and 10:30. Michael R. Sullivan and his wife were driving up to their cottage in a pickup truck when their dogs began barking. Mr. Sullivan flashed his spotlight on the neighbor's house and said that he saw a human being running, adding that this guy was in a blue shirt by a stump. Though it was difficult to prove that the disappearing food was caused by Kevin Dye, a series of other bizarre events would further convince investigators that the missing 9-year-old must have been behind the strange encounters. According to reporters, when tracking nearby where food would go missing, investigators would often find primitive shelters and constructions estimated to have been large enough only to accommodate a child of Kevin's size. Several of the unknown primitive structures were described by investigators as appearing to have been basic lean-to shelters made from the boughs of surrounding pine trees and bushes. Other volunteers would describe coming across freshly made piles of stacked stones that almost appeared to have been landmarks or shrines made by the 9-year-old boy to help him find his way around a location. Using the disappearing food and the unknown structures as a way of potentially tracking the location of Kevin Dye, the volunteer search and rescue teams would lay out more food in the hopes of possibly finding and catching the missing boy. After several days of using this strategy, searchers began to worry that they were making next to no progress in actually finding the young boy and decided to take a more systematic approach and travel in grids over vast distances, making it impossible for the missing child to elude rescuers. Despite their best efforts, by the 10th day of the search, no sign of Kevin Dye was ever recovered. It would also be on the 10th day that the search and rescue operations would take an unexplainable turn. Although never explained, it would appear that the group of search and rescue volunteers would become increasingly superstitious of the unknown structures and the nature of the disappearance of the boy. This growing superstition would cause Kevin's father, a man by the name of Mr. Philip Dye, to hold a prayer rally at the location of where Kevin had last been seen. The local newspapers would claim that Mr. Philip Dye worked as the treasurer for the Christ United Methodist Church, the local church that had been vacationing with the family at the time of Kevin's disappearance. Due to his position at the church, Mr. Philip Dye organized a prayer group that would bless the search and rescue volunteers, as well as travel through the area praying for Kevin's return and to ward off any evil superstitions. Oddly enough, shortly after the end of the prayer rally, it would be on the 10th day of the search that Kevin Dye would soon be recovered. According to the official investigation reports, it would be on the 28th of July, at around 8:30 in the morning, that a group of volunteers would find Kevin Dye lying at the northern edges of Elkhorn Creek, located near the base of Elkhorn Mountain, completely unconscious and in a very weakened state. Tapping the boy several times to see if he was still alive, Kevin Dye would soon awaken and look over at the search and rescue volunteers and offer a weak smile. The volunteers would later tell investigators that after having been prodded several times, Kevin had woken up, crawled over to the stretcher that the volunteers had brought, and then fell back to sleep as the team carefully began to carry him out of the wilderness on a sloped 2.5-mile hike. Shortly after reaching the rest of the group, Kevin would be examined by a healthcare professional who would make special note to notice that though one of Kevin's shoes was missing, his foot did not appear to have been severely injured in any way. Additionally, the healthcare professional appeared to take note of a series of scratches found across Kevin's arms and face, but with no other major injuries anywhere else on his body. Less than an hour later, the boy would be admitted to the local hospital and monitored by a doctor. It would be at around this time that investigators would come to find that Kevin had lost over 25 pounds in the 10 days that he was missing, with the hospital indicating that Kevin had not had anything to eat since before he had disappeared. The medical examiner also believed that Kevin would not have survived for another day, and that his sudden rapid weight loss would have put him at a conservative estimate of around 7,000 calories burned every day, or around 5,000 calories burned through pure exercise per day. This finding would directly contradict many of the investigators' claims that Kevin had been spotted eating food from porches or digging through trash cans for leftovers. Additionally, the excessive weight loss would make many question as to how Kevin could have continued evading detection without succumbing to exhaustion and extreme muscle fatigue. Curious as to what had happened, investigators would wait a week for Kevin to recover before asking questions about his ordeal. After the week, Kevin would only say a few words and seemed generally uninterested in the affair, offering no information about what exactly happened during those missing 10 days. Investigators would later claim that due to Kevin's history of seizures, they believed that the 9-year-old boy could have entered a semi-conscious state while traveling through the woods, causing him to travel for hours at a time in random directions, unsure of where he was at and without knowledge of how long he had been walking for. The mysterious Michael and Makana von Gortler incident. On the 22nd of June back in 2011, a father and daughter would suddenly vanish when going on a hike to the summit of Mount Missouri, located in the state of Colorado. Although the two experienced hikers would reach the summit at around 14,000 feet, their bodies would tell a completely different story when investigators would conduct a thorough investigation into the matter. According to the missing persons report, 53-year-old Michael von Gortler and his daughter, 20-year-old Makana von Gortler, would leave their home in Boulder, Colorado on the 14th of June to spend the summer going on a series of hiking and climbing trails together over the span of about a week. Michael, who worked as an emergency room physician in the city of Boulder, Colorado, had often visited the nearby trails and mountain ranges over the years and had become quite an experienced outdoorsman, hiker and climber across the many Colorado mountain ranges. Additionally, Michael's daughter Makana, who studied out of the University of Colorado, majoring in ecology and evolutionary biology, would often spend her entire spring, summer and winter vacations between school going on long hiking and camping trips with her father to get pictures of the natural wildlife and ecology of the local area. Makana would also be considered by many close friends and family as having been extremely experienced in both hiking and climbing, and both Makana and her father were in excellent physical shape at the time of their disappearance. It was later uncovered by investigators that Michael and Makana would spend the majority of their week-long camping and hiking trip at the father's second home. Michael's second home was a small summer house located in the town of Buena Vista, roughly 150 miles west of Boulder. It was also believed that Michael and Makana would spend that first week together, traveling to the town of Telluride and attending the Bluegrass Festival before returning back home to the summer house in Buena Vista in order to make several preparations. It would be there that the two hikers would spend several days planning their trip to Mount Missouri, including acquiring several updated maps to help plan their routes, purchase and replace new equipment for their climbs, and stock up on extra emergency gear in the event of sudden bad weather conditions or any unforeseen issues. Although their precautions may have seemed too cautious, considering the fact that the two only had plans to camp around the base of Mount Missouri for a few days and then hike the summit of the mountain before returning back to the base of the mountain on a short day trip, Michael Gortler was known for being over-prepared when it came to hiking and camping journeys. Prior to their departure, Makana would send a text to her longtime boyfriend, a man by the name of Paul Casimir, that the two were headed up to a mountain trail with a summit measured at being 14,000 feet, but that her phone had been left on the roaming setting due to their cellular network connection being out of range, and that she would be unable to text or call as she wanted to avoid using data as her data plan was more expensive when it came to using roaming data. The text she had sent would later be confirmed with a local news article which would publish the text to the boyfriend. The text would read as follows: "I just got back to Buena Vista with my dad. I left my phone on roaming so I can't talk. We had a great time and we're going to try a 14 tomorrow. I'll be able to see you in a few days. I've missed you too." The number would be a reference to the height of the mountain, with Makana's cryptid message meaning that the two would be attempting to climb a summit estimated around 14,000 feet. The night before their disappearance, on the 22nd of June, at around 12:23 in the morning, Makana would send one last text to her boyfriend Paul, which would state the following: "We're hiking Mount Missouri tomorrow, staying the night here, then driving back the 23rd. I will help my dad pack the next day, so I can see you on the 25th, and we can celebrate whatever month we're in now." After a few days passed, Paul would fail to get any reply or message back from either Michael or Makana, and would begin to worry that something strange had happened. By the 24th, Paul would grow increasingly disturbed by the lack of reply that he would reach out to Makana's mother, Michael's wife, Mrs. Dea von Gortler, and ask her when the two were expected to return back to Boulder and why the two were not returning his texts or phone calls. At first, Dea would reassure Paul that the two were most likely taking their time coming back from the trip and would return sometime on the 24th of June or the 25th, but that she would reach out to Michael and Makana to check up on them. After spending a few hours trying to reach her husband and daughter and failing to get in contact with them, Mrs. Dea von Gortler would contact the Chaffee County Sheriff's Department to report the two as missing and to do a checkup on their whereabouts. At first, the search for Michael and Makana went slowly, as investigators first wanted to confirm that the two were still in the area of Mount Missouri and not back at their Buena Vista summer home. After driving an estimated 3 hours to the summer house, Mrs. Dea von Gortler would confirm that her husband and daughter were missing, and after several hours of searching, the Chaffee County Sheriff's Department would locate and find Michael von Gortler's vehicle parked at the Mount Missouri parking lot located at the base of the mountain. Almost immediately upon finding the vehicle, the Sheriff's Department would organize one of the largest ground and aerial searches conducted in the state, alongside the local military and other law enforcement organizations. On the first day of the search, the nearby military base would utilize a state-of-the-art Black Hawk helicopter to help carry search and rescue volunteers near the summit of the 3 surrounding 14,000-foot mountains. While ferrying people, the military would also utilize thermal imaging cameras and other sensitive equipment in the hopes of locating the missing 2 hikers within the first few days. Over 40 search and rescue volunteers would be brought to the summits of the mountains, an estimated 12 volunteers per peak, and would help to cover over 1,000 feet in elevation that first day, but no sign of the missing hikers were found. Investigators were worried that their search efforts may have been in vain, as the area of the mountains and their summits were completely barren and held very little foliage, making it difficult to explain how it was that aerial support was unable to spot the brightly clothed pair from the sky anywhere along the route. Even more strange, an article published in the local news would also claim that by the 8th day of the search for the missing father and daughter, it was believed that search and rescue volunteers, the Sheriff's Department, United States National Forest Rangers, and the nearby military base had covered more than 800 square miles of terrain, both by ground and air, and were unable to find any sign of the missing pair. It would not be until the 10th day of the search that investigators would finally recover the missing father and daughter, when the search helicopter was in the middle of depositing another group of search and rescue volunteers on the summit of Mount Missouri. According to the helicopter pilot, as he was descending onto the summit, the pilot claimed that he saw something incredibly unusual in the forest area directly below their passing location. Although the pilot would never describe what he saw that was considered distinctly unusual, rumors from search and rescue volunteers claimed that he saw what looked like a large figure in the area that seemed difficult to explain. Unsure of what it was that was seen, the pilot would send the volunteers into the area where they would find 2 individuals. According to the volunteers, they were not immediately identified as belonging to Michael and Makana, as they were horribly injured and disfigured beyond recognition. Though the pair would later be confirmed as having been the missing father and daughter, there was initially no declaration of their identities, and several other bizarre events would take place that would make missing 411 investigators suspicious as to the nature of the recovery. A group of search and rescue volunteers would claim that the individuals were found in a forested area far from any ledges or cliffs, somewhere around the 12,000-foot elevation mark on the mountain. Another group would claim that the individuals were found lying atop an open field of grass around the similar elevation mark. However, despite these conflicting stories, no confirmation of either account would be made, leading many missing 411 investigators with the suspicions that a bizarre cover-up had taken place. It would take another few days before the coroner could confirm the identity of the injured pair as belonging to Michael and Makana. Even more peculiar, the coroner and sheriff's department worked together in order to provide an explanation of the cause of the passing of Michael and Makana, as both the coroner and sheriff's department were confused as to the exact location where they were found and the exact nature of their demise. The Chaffee County Sheriff's Department would hold a press conference on the 5th of July, claiming that the discovery of where Michael and Makana were found came as a total shock to the investigators. It was hard to understand how any accident could have occurred, as the von Gortlers had been at a high elevation and appeared to have been suffering from injuries inconsistent with a fall. Additionally, the sheriff's department would confirm that the weather had been exceptionally good at the time of their expected demise, as there was no measured wind, no clouds, and no sudden weather shifts that could have led to any accidents for the pair. In all considerations, the day of their disappearance was a perfect day for a short hike to the summit and back down. The most confusing statements would come from several interviewed searchers on a live broadcast, which would claim that it was believed that the pair had to have reached the summit and fallen while they were descending the summit along a hiking trail. The searchers would claim that less than 200 feet from the summit, the pair fell. The Chaffee County Sheriff Pete Palmer would tell reporters that it was difficult to confirm the theory, as the distance and placement of the body was both too far and in too awkward of a location for the pair to have fallen from only 200 feet from the summit. The sheriff would also provide the statement to the news reporters, saying that they are not exactly sure where they were when they fell, as none of the information they had seemed to match up. In one report, searchers would claim they believed that the pair had fallen 200 feet from the summit while descending. Another report would claim that the bodies of the father and daughter were found in a densely forested area at the 12,000-foot elevation point, and a third report would claim that the pair were found much closer to the summit, laid out on grass. Even more peculiar, the coroner's office would claim that the damage and injuries of the pair were consistent only with a fall estimated to have been at least 1,000 feet in height at a 60-degree grade, which would have been impossible to have suffered from if only a few hundred feet from the summit or at the 12,000-foot elevation point. Chaffee County Coroner Randy Ametis would also make several increasingly bizarre statements to reporters, claiming that the only thing known for certain was that Dr. Michael von Gortler and his daughter, Makana von Gortler, had both died from blunt force trauma injuries to the head and neck at almost the exact same time. At first, the coroner believed there was evidence of burn or scorch marks, but would later confirm that there was no indication of injuries caused from lightning, a strange statement that seemed both unwarranted and inconsistent. Randy Ametis would also confirm that due to the decomposition and condition of the individuals, it was believed that the two had died on the 22nd of June, the same day that the hike had initially begun. Despite the inconsistent information and data, the coroner's office would confirm that their passing was officially declared as an accident, and it was believed that no crime had been committed. The coroners would provide relatives of the von Gortler with the explanation that the two had most likely been blown off the cliff from a significant gust of wind, despite reports of clear skies and low winds. One of the most difficult to explain aspects of the coroner's report, however, were the lack of injuries to other parts of the bodies. According to the searchers, Michael and Makana had to have fallen at least 1,000 feet to explain their injuries and location. At the height and steep grade, injuries would be expected to be seen across their bodies, including small and large scrapes, bruises, torn clothes, and small and large rocks around their remains. The coroner's statements, however, only included claims and descriptions that Michael and Makana had died from blunt force trauma to their head and neck, without making any other statements about injuries to the torso, legs, or other regions of the body. Given the fact that Michael and Makana, who were experienced hikers and climbers, were believed to have been on an easy trail at the time of their fall, Chaffee County Sheriff's Officer Pete Palmer would express disbelief at the mystery of their passing. The search and rescue volunteers would also express confusion surrounding the location that the bodies were recovered. It seemed impossible to explain how the individuals were not found until the 10th day of the search in an area so close to the summit, and believed to have been checked several times over by volunteers during the first week of the operation. Helicopters had also been flying in and around the area every single day since the disappearance, and not a single person had seen the pair in a location that the two were expected to have been hiking in. To this day, the mysterious passing of Michael and Makana von Gortler have been the subject of many theories and continue to be regarded as one of the most mysterious and unexplainable accidents recorded in the Colorado mountains.